Well, for those of you who are here with us this morning, it's good to see you. It's great also to be with all of you who are joining us both live now and some I know who may watch this a little bit later on. That song, Lord, I Need You, really in so many ways expresses the heart of what Jesus would have to teach us together this morning. So if you have a Bible, will you come with me to Luke chapter 18 and the first 8 verses. And as you're turning to that, I want to start with a question. Have you ever felt like giving up? The run that never seems to end. The revision that goes on and on and on. Or trials that won't lift. Or temptations that never go away. Giving up is easy. Sticking at it is hard, especially when the mountain in front of you is high. I wonder, have you ever felt like that when it comes to prayer? Well, our final and third stop on our journey through our motto text this year, 2021, brings us to the challenge to persevere in prayer. Let me remind you, Romans 12, verse 12, be joyful in hope, patient in affliction, and faithful in prayer. Faithful and prayer. Well, there's a mountain, if ever I've seen one. I've tried. I want to climb it. I've just failed so many times. I've felt convicted to pray. I've set aside time to pray. I've written lists to pray. I've even chosen places to pray. But I still struggle. You? Well, come with me then. Let's bring all this to Jesus. Let's sit down with his disciples here in Luke's account, chapter 18. Then Jesus told his disciples a parable to show them that they should always pray and not give up. And it's this parable that tells us why. Because persistent perseverance in prayer does not achieve God's acceptance and blessing. It is the result of it. I mean, in Jesus' second parable here, also about prayer, it's the tax collector who comes with nothing. Can't even lift his eyes towards heaven, pleading with God for mercy. He's the one, in the words of Jesus, who goes home justified before God, accepted by him, right in his eyes, the recipient of his blessing. And the prayers of the one who thought he had something to offer, well, they're rejected. You see, Jesus isn't calling you and me to scale prayer mountain, to see who's climbed the highest. No, God is waiting for those who know they can't and so never stop asking. If you've ever walked up a long hill with young children, and hasn't it been great to have those little ones here with us this morning? How I've missed that. It's Jesus himself, just in a few moments' time, Luke will remind us, who encourages even the little ones to come to him. This is how you come to my kingdom. Well, if you've ever walked up a long hill with little children, you'll probably recognize these familiar words. Will you carry me? Well, that's what Jesus is looking for. Faith. Without faith, It's impossible to please God, Hebrews 11 verse 6, because anyone who comes to him must believe that he exists and that he rewards those who earnestly seek him. That's what Jesus is talking about here, right between these two parables on prayer. We'll only look at the first, but as he concludes in verse 8, he says these words, "When the Son of Man comes, will he find faith on the earth?" Jesus is looking for your prayers because he wants your heart. That's the first thing here. Jesus is looking for your prayers because he wants your heart. No child on a long walk ever runs to a parent and says, "Carry me," so that father or mother would think better of them. They want you. You're the only one who can help. And they won't stop coming until you do. Carry me, I'm tired. How much further will you carry me again? That's what we learn from the widow here. Verse 2, Jesus said, "In a certain town there was a judge who neither feared God nor cared what people thought. And there was a widow in that town who kept coming to him with the plea, 'Grant me justice against my adversary.'" It's a desperate situation. This judge, given as they were by God as his instrument for justice, well, this one couldn't even care less what God thinks. Responsible for the vulnerable. This one couldn't even give a monkey's. All he cares about is himself. I mean, it's like a mafia boss that you're coming before in the hope that he'll defend you against his mates. It's not going to happen. It's a disaster for this poor widow. You see, before she began, she was already at the bottom of the pile. That's what it meant to be a widow in Jesus' day. No rights, no protection. And as she speaks, we discover someone at least has got it in for her. In fact, her only hope is this judge. But as we've seen, that's no hope at all. What can she do? Verse 3, she kept coming to him with the plea, "Grant me justice against my adversary." She keeps coming. She is crying out for justice. Because when you feel the need, you will plead. When you feel it, no one will stop you coming because of it. I mean, this widow feels it so much that she kept coming. And I think any who suffered any form of injustice, and in some ways each of us have, in some way, even if it's someone cutting us up on the road, well, you'll know precisely how she feels. And then, of course, there are those things which are far more serious as injustices in our world. Let me take you back to Wednesday the 14th, just 4 years ago, in June 2017, London. 72 innocent people died in that blaze at Grenfell Tower. Among them, 18 children. Hundreds battled to save more. From the Wednesday right through to the Sunday, hundreds now exhausted and overwhelmed, gathered in the streets and under the arches to remember, to mourn. Psalm 47 was read in their presence, and into the silence the words rang out, "He heals the brokenhearted and binds up their wounds." Verse 3. Silence. But when verse 6 was read, something different happened. The Lord sustains the humble, but casts the wicked to the ground. In her book, Where is God in All the Suffering?, Amy Orr Ewing, who was there that day, described what happened at that moment. She writes, "The crowd spontaneously erupted into clapping and shouting. The instinctual grief and anger of a community found an outlet in celebrating the words of a Hebrew poet from around 2,500 years ago. For anyone who has suffered in any way, shape, or form the impact of wickedness in this world, the cry for justice is deep, and it is strong, and it is real, and it is persistent while the injustice remains." And Jesus understands this. So much so, he's woven this cry for justice right through this brief parable. He uses that term, give justice, 4 times. It's on the lips of the widow as she cries out for help. It's in the words of the judge as he eventually grants it. It's on the lips of Jesus who assures God will give it. And he repeats again, he will give it quickly. God understands our need for justice, for wrongs to be put right. God made this world so good, and yet we know in every part it is so broken. Evil has been ruining it ever since the entrance of sin on that first day, the fall. We feel that injustice everywhere we look. When we hear of the oppression of minority groups in China, in Myanmar, a child wrenched from their family again finds herself or himself caught up in a trade that in our day sees 1.2 million children trafficked. And the rise in domestic violence, even in our own country, in our own region, in our own town, should make us cry out for justice. When we see billions still trapped in this world, in the worship of false gods, when we see those we love still blinded by the power of Satan, we should plead for justice. Where we witness the destruction of families, the dividing of churches, even the devastation in our own hearts to temptation and sin, do you feel your need for justice? Does your heart cry out like this widow? Well, for the judge, verse 4, for some time he refused. But finally, he said to himself, even though I don't fear God or care what people think, yet because this widow keeps bothering me, I will see that she gets justice so that she won't eventually come and attack me. I mean, she keeps bothering him. There she is. Can you see her waiting at the courtroom door before he's even arrived? She's at his feet, following him to work every day, turning up at the lunch club, banging on his door through the watches of the night. In fact, the term Jesus uses here is of one who has been beaten black and blue. That is what she does with her pleading. In other words, this widow makes her need more important to this judge even than his own. When you're this desperate, it's what you do. When you feel the need, you plead. Janet Skinner, she did the same. Wrongly accused of fraud with 38 others. You may have heard just this last week about the Post Office Horizon scandal. Possibly the greatest, or certainly the most wide-affecting miscarriage of justice in our history as a country, possibly. She spent 9 years in prison in 2007, leaving 2 small children at home and losing all prospects of finding work, and she'd done nothing wrong. That's the scandal of injustice. It's why they never stopped fighting. Do you see that? It's what you do. And when you feel the need, you will plead. When you see this world's problems as God shows you they are, you will come to him. When you look inside and you realize the depth of your need, nothing will stop you. Carry me. When you feel the need, you will plead. And thirdly and finally, when you know God wants to give, you'll come. When you know God wants to give, you'll come. Do you know, we'll never need to beat God down with our pleading like this. He doesn't need us to beat him black and blue. He's already committed to give. Verse 6, and the Lord said, listen to what the unjust judge says. And then he contrasts this, and will not God bring about justice for his chosen ones who cry out to him day and night? Will he keep putting them off? I tell you, he will see that they get justice, and quickly. Jesus wants us to see the contrast here. If you can get justice out of an unjust judge, just think what you'll receive from God. His work is perfect. Deuteronomy 32 verse 4. And all his ways are just. In fact, that is why Jesus is here. Physically here at this moment in history, in this place, seated in front of these disciples. It's why he came to earth, so that God would establish his justice. He was so committed, the Father would send his Son for it. The Son at this moment is so committed, he's already got his sights set on Jerusalem. He will remain committed to justice to the end till he holds out his arms on the cross. And he will remain committed, brothers and sisters, to seeing the completion of his justice until that moment when he will come again and our eyes will see, and he will cast injustice out of creation forever. You see, when you arrive at the courtroom burdened by the pain of the burn of the injustices you are now aware of today, when you approach, you discover that the door is already wide open. And the one there beckoning you to come in is the one who has justice even engraved on the palms of his hands. Come. The widow, well, she had no one. Those who come discover that they are God's chosen ones. That's how Jesus describes us here. Day after day, month after month, year after year, she kept having to interrupt the family meal. We're already sitting at the table. When you come at night, weeping tears in your trials, you won't find a judge locked away behind guard dogs in some great gated compound. you'll find your Father in heaven already sitting at the foot of your bed, waiting for you to cry to him again in the darkness. No. Will he keep putting us off like that unjust judge? Never. He will see that his children get justice and get justice quickly. That doesn't always mean straight away. I mean, Jesus had just been explaining that his rule is both now and his rule is also not yet. It's now because the king is already in their midst. That's what he's just said in chapter 17, verse 21. His kingdom and rule is now because he'll remove the power of evil to rule over you and me when he defeats it at the cross. His rule is now because his power has overcome the powers of darkness to keep you from him. The moment you respond to him, he comes quickly and sets you free. The moment you let him rule your life. But his kingdom is also not yet. Because the innocent will still suffer in this broken world until he returns to right all the wrongs. But that day will come quickly. It's not far off. We can be certain of that. The question is, verse 8, when the Son of Man comes, will he find faith on the earth? Will you be ready when he comes, as he's just said, to separate the righteous from the wicked? Will he find a church here that is waiting for him? Will he find faith in your heart? If he will, what will this look like? Like a child who sees the impossible mountain and never stops turning to her father crying, "Carry me." And because our need is constant, our prayers need to be also. The Bible's full of models. Those who saw the need and who teach us to pray for it. There's David and all the Psalms. I want to encourage you, learn to sing God's songs of deliverance in the light. Then you'll be ready to walk in the dark. I can still remember on one occasion I was in bed in the middle of the day. It felt like the darkness would never lift. I could only recall one thing. Having spent many years studying the Bible, I could recall one thing. And I said it over and again. The Lord is my shepherd. I will not want. The Bible's full of models. We've got Paul and his prayers, who commands us in Ephesians 6 verse 18, keep on praying for all the Lord's people. What does he have in mind that we would ask for the church? Chapter 1, he says, I keep on praying that you will know God better. I keep on praying that you will have power, chapter 3, to grasp his love for you. I keep on praying, Colossians 1, that you will live a life worthy of the Lord. I keep on praying that you will have his power to patiently endure with joyful thanksgiving. Every time you remember the mountain of need in the lives of your brothers and sisters, pick one of these and make it your prayer. And finally, we have, don't we, the model of Jesus himself. The Gospels record him separately praying on more than 40 occasions. And as we are clothed with his righteousness, as we are indwelt by his power, we can pray his prayer. You'll know it well, I'm sure. It's come just in chapter 11 here of Luke. I've often used it when I'm out walking to pray. Just last week, I was out and I paused over each request here, and I realized just how fully it links with this parable and this cry for justice. Father, hallowed be your name. Holy, 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 where your glory shines, Lord, no evil can dwell. So hallow your name in this world. Your kingdom come. Lord, no evil can rule. No justice remain where you're the king. Give us today our daily bread. In this broken world, there is so much need. Lord, provide. Lord, feed those who have nothing. Clothe those who are destitute. And forgive us our sin, for we forgive everyone who sins against us. Oh Lord, forgive us. Deal with a wickedness in our hearts and drive it out from our relationships. And lead us not into temptation. Deliver us from the adversary. Come, Lord Jesus. Lead us back to you. Look again at that mountain. Prayer. Does it look any different? You will climb it. Jesus will teach you how to pray. His Spirit will give you the power to do it. His Father is ready and waiting when you do.